What's up, bros and besties? Welcome to Bitches Love Sports on NTX Radio. How are y'all doing today? I'm your host, Monet, and we've got a few sports headlines to talk about. So, Mavs fans and Wings fans, we're definitely going to have a chat in the second half. But right now, I want to talk to the Cowboys fans. What's up? How are y'all feeling? Are y'all feeling good after last night's win? Is anybody still celebrating? Or better yet, do y'all still want to fire Matt Eberflus? Is that still a thing? Or are we good now? So for anyone who didn't catch it, the Dallas Cowboys put on somewhat of a show last night, defeating the Las Vegas Raiders with a score of 33-16. Yes, a very solid win. Two of those points, I should note, were scored by the defense, who played an absolutely inspired game last night. So, leading up to the kickoff, the team did pay tribute to Marshawn Kneeland. There was a moment of silence in the stadium. And if you were watching any of the press conferences and interviews leading up to kickoff yesterday, they were repeating the theme of how they wanted to show up and how they wanted to honor Marshawn Kneeland. And I would say that their performance was a very fitting tribute for him. So, as far as the game itself, though, now, if y'all have been watching week after week, you know I've been doing the burn book segment after losses. But that doesn't really feel quite right after a win. So instead, I'm going to tell you who I'm swiping right on from last night. Yes, so which Cowboys performances earned a swipe right. So on dating apps, you know someone likes what they saw when they swipe right on you. So on Bitches Love Sports, it is the same principle. If I liked what I saw, if it activated my inner fangirl, it gets a swipe right. So here's what I absolutely loved from last night's game. So some of these are stats and some of these are just general observations. But we're going to start with George Pickens. George Pickens earns a swipe right. Hey, JV, good to see you in the chat. But yeah, George Pickens earned a swipe right because according to Next Gen Stats, George Pickens caught 9 of 11 targets for 144 yards and a touchdown in the Cowboys' Week 11 win, gaining 77 yards after the catch, the 8th most by a wide receiver in any game this season. Pickens now owns 2 of the top 10 YAC performances by wide receivers in 2025 after he totaled 85 in Week 6 against the Panthers. Pickens forced 4 missed tackles on the night, tying his career high and tying for the second most by any wide receiver in a game this season. So Pickens definitely gets a swipe right. And from an observational standpoint, like even outside the stats, he just, like, I was watching his route running and let's just say if you watched me in the very beginning of this podcast, like back in 2021, I was still learning what route running was supposed to look like. And since I've gotten a better handle on that, what I saw last night was, I feel like, one of the first times I've really watched Cowboys receivers and just been like, damn, that was like amazing. Like I was really enjoying just watching him running around making people miss. That was awesome. So props to him. Swipe right for George Pickens. My next swipe right goes to Dak Prescott and the Cowboys O-line because I feel like they kind of worked together on this. So this is another mention by Next Gen Stats. They said Dak Prescott completed 25 of 33 passes for 268 yards and 4 touchdowns in the Cowboys' Week 11 win over the Raiders, facing a pressure rate of just 20.6%, his second lowest in a game this season. So huge shout out to the Cowboys O-line. Prescott completed 22 of 27 passes for 256 yards and all 4 of his touchdowns from a clean pocket. He was effective throwing between the numbers, completing 16 of 19 such passes for 206 yards and 3 touchdowns. So shout out to Dak Prescott and the Cowboys O-line for really getting it together yesterday. Like, things weren't looking good going into the bye. So I would say they definitely took some time to, as Brian Schottenheimer said, figured out what they do well and what they don't do well. And they absolutely stuck to what they did do well. Even if you just look at the stats with the way that they balanced the run game and the passing game, the offense was definitely clicking on I won't say all cylinders, most cylinders last night. All right, moving on. Before we get to the rest of the swipes in this segment, I have to make a confession because sometimes you get on these apps, and even as a woman, you're just out here and you're a girl who is really looking for some good D. And last night, defense, y'all, defense. But last night, the Cowboys let us know what they're working with with the addition of Quinnen Williams on the D line. So this is another next gen stats of observation for Quinnen Williams. It says in his Cowboys debut, Quinnen Williams forced a season-high 5 pressures on 28 pass rushes at 17.9% and earned 1.5 sacks. He recorded all of his pressures in the first half, tying for the most pressures in a half by any Cowboys defensive tackle since at least 2018. Williams accomplished his pass rush production despite facing 14 double teams. That's a 50% rate, the second most he has faced in a game this entire season. So he didn't just show up. He showed out. Like, he definitely made it known, like, yeah, I came here to make an impact and I came here to make a difference. So props to him. And by the way, how many snaps did he play? Hold on. He played 33 snaps. So 55% of the snaps last night he played in his first game with the Dallas Cowboys. So, like, huge round of applause. Swipe right. He gets a rose for that, as a matter of fact. So speaking of the D-line, one of the things my girls tell me all the time, they tell me that it is sexy when a man applies pressure. And the Cowboys brought that too. They pressured Geno Smith a total of 16 times. 16, y'all. You guys, that's hot. That's definitely giving I know what I want, and I'm not afraid to go after it. So definitely swiping right on that. As a matter of fact, the entire D-line gets a rose for that, in addition to Quinnen Williams. But speaking of pressure, Oso Odigizua gets his own swipe right for something that I absolutely loved towards the end of the game. So if you're watching, you probably noticed the sequence. Towards the end of the game, he gets home, he gets to Geno Smith, brings him to the ground, but Geno Smith gets the ball out of his hands, and they call it an incomplete pass. So Osa did not get credit for that particular play. So what does Osa do? He gets up and he goes after him again. That time bringing him to the ground, that time getting the sack. So that to me says Osa is one of those guys who knows what he brings to the table and isn't settling for anything less than what he deserves. So that's a high-quality defensive tackle for y'all. And the last rights go to, first, I want to acknowledge linebacker unit because I feel like last night I saw the most intentional, urgent play from the linebackers as a whole that I've seen all season. Throughout the season, week after week, we see, various linebackers at different times do things that are good and that contribute. But I feel like last night was one of the first times I was like, okay, I actually noticed a difference in this entire unit. They don't look nearly as lost when they're asked to play open field coverage. They actually look like they know where they're supposed to be going and what they're supposed to be doing. And I feel like that's what my homegirls in the chat would call a low bar. But I'm still going to swipe right on them for that, just for them stepping up, just for them showing improvement. I feel like they deserve that. And then I also want to give a swipe right to Donovan Izaraku and Deron Bland for that safety that they pulled off, just because that was one of those moments where I feel like at that point, most people thought it was inevitable that the Cowboys would win. Even if you watch like the probability on NFL Pro, it was pretty high in the favor of the Cowboys by that point. And that's when it's very easy for a lot of people to phone it in, let some things slide, not pay attention to the details. But they said, no, we don't care if you are all the way on the other end of the field. We're still going to do our job. We're still going to make you pay for not getting out of the end zone fast enough. We're still going to get after these points. And so I just want to acknowledge that the defense as a whole played a very complete game, and give these two guys their swipe right for making that play. Now, and I see y'all in the chat, and we get to y'all's comments in a second. When it comes to swiping right and deciding what it is that you like, what it is that you saw that you liked, something else that you have to think about is the corresponding red flags. So yes, you can swipe right all day, but you still got to pay attention to the red flags that are coming up. So for the Dallas Cowboys, They're playing the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend on Sunday, 3:25 p.m. kickoff, by the way, for anybody who's wondering. And so one of the red flags that comes up is while, we're acknowledging that Dak Prescott and the Cowboys O line got Dak his second lowest pressure rate of the entire season. That's cool and all. However, Philly pressures at more than twice the rate of the Raiders, not 50% more. We're talking about over 100% more. So the Raiders, even going into this game, they had one of the lowest pressure rates in the NFL. Now, the Cowboys did hold them to an even lower pressure rate than what their average was. I think their average was about 27%, and the Cowboys O-line held them to about 20%, but 27% is still really low. I think when I was reading about it, they said that it was the third lowest pressure rate in the NFL, right? Philly, on the other hand, has been noted as getting a 50% pressure rate in recent weeks and like a 39.7% pressure rate overall. So we're talking about a whole different ball game when it comes to keeping the pocket clean for Dak against the Eagles. So it's one of those things that's like, okay, I want to give you your flowers for what you did against the Raiders, but we got to remember that's the fucking Raiders. And I was listening to a press conference that dropped literally as I was on my way over here. So that's why I'm not commenting too much on it, because honestly, I didn't finish listening to it. But one of the things that Brian Schottenheimer was asked about was about the fact that the Raiders are another losing team that the Cowboys have beat. And he said something along the lines of like, well, every team is a good team, and, the Raiders have had some teams on the ropes, yada, yada, yada. Okay, all of that may be true, and those are things that you can acknowledge, and you're the coach. It's kind of your job to think that way. However, we have to be realistic. The Raiders are not the Eagles. And so before we get too excited, like, we can be excited about this game, but let's not act like we feel like all these units have completely turned things around because they were able to get that kind of a performance to get against the Raiders. So that pressure rate, keeping the pocket clean for Dak, making sure that we have a balanced offense in terms of the run attempts and the passing attempts. Those are all things to still keep an eye on against the Eagles and see how the Cowboys handle that whole situation. Can they do it when the competition is tougher? Another thing to think about, another red flag that's going to come up, is on the opposite side of the ball. So for anyone who researched the Raiders, they've been having O-line issues all season. That's part of the reason why Ashton Jeanty, as talented as everyone knows him to be, has not been talked about as much this season, because there just hasn't really been enough cohesion there. There hasn't been enough performance by all parties there to really get him going the way that he could. I mean, don't get me wrong, 3.8 yards per carry is still very solid, but when your team is still losing anyway, people aren't really going to talk about the potential of your star running back just because they know what he could be doing. In other words, investing in potential. They want to see what you are actually going to put on film. So when it comes to the defense, and one of the things that I was really proud of with the defense as a whole was that, like, yes, they were still doing the 5 down front thing on occasion, but even when they only sent 4, they were able to get home, especially thanks to Quinnen Williams. But, like, they were getting home with 4. And that was dope. That was good to see. That's something I feel like Cowboys fans have been wanting to see all season. However, like I said, the Raiders have been having O-line issues all season. And once again, the Eagles O-line is not the Raiders O-line. So basically, the red flags are in the trenches. That's what it comes down to. The game is won in the trenches, and so that's the thing that you're going to want to watch. And when it comes to facing the Eagles, the Cowboys are dealing with a very different battle in the trenches than what they face against the Raiders. So Cowboys fans, by all means, be happy, celebrate, feel good about yesterday's win, feel good about the foundational elements of some of the things that we saw, because some of that is still going to come into play regardless of what the stats look like. The fact that they're getting home with 4, the fact that your linebackers look like they actually know what they're doing, the fact that the guys still have fight even late in the game when they could just be tired and phone it in. The fact that they went a whole ass 8-minute drive against a team and didn't really look tired until the very end there. Like, I feel like those are all things to feel good about. However, none of those things by themselves will guarantee you a win. So there are things that you still want to watch when it comes to evaluating whether or not you think certain units, certain players are good, or what to expect from them week in, week out. So those are my swipe rights and red flags for the day. If you have anything that you would like to swipe right on, feel free to put that in the comments or in the chat. I don't know how likely guys are to play along with that type of segment. If that's one of the things that feels weird to y'all, but I won't judge. You want to swipe right? Let me know in the comments. But for now, I'm gonna look at what y'all are saying in here. Hi JV, hi Clement, good to see y'all. Clement says, one of the keys to the Eagles game on Sunday is, one, we have to win on first down on offense and defense. That is one of the things Schottenheimer has been talking about, by the way. He also says, meaning that the offense has to stay on schedule, can't afford second and third down longs and penalties. Ooh, I actually should have listed that as another red flag, is the penalties. There weren't a lot of them, but the ones that did occur were things that you're just like, we don't need that. We don't need lining up in the neutral zone. We don't need any of the foolishness before the snaps. Clean that up, especially against a team like the Raiders. Like, that's one of the games where you should be able to focus, where you should be able to maintain your discipline. So yeah, definitely can't afford penalties against the Eagles. The last thing you want to do against that offense is give yards away. Because while a lot of people want to talk like, oh, the Philadelphia Eagles offense is so lopsided, it needs work, yada, yada, yada. They're getting yards and they're winning games. So you don't want to let them keep the momentum. As a matter of fact, this last game that they played against, honestly, who are they playing? The Lions. They played against the Lions, and a lot of people were really critical of one of the penalties against the Lions that helped extend one of the drives that the Eagles was on. And people were saying that that was a game-changing penalty right there. So that's just a prime example. Like, mistakes are going to happen anyway. You don't want to give the refs reasons to give yards to the Eagles. And also, the margin of error is so slim with them. Like, you just need to do everything that you can to stop the drives when you can. We don't need to give away first downs. We don't need to give away any yards, whether it's 5 or 15 or some dumbass DPI. Just don't do it. Clement also says, we have to stop the run of Barkley, and we must have pass discipline and contain Hurts scrambles and force him to beat us from the pocket. Yes. We got to defend Brown and Smith with looking into the backfield. 100%. And that's pretty much the entire Eagles offense is what you listed there. So, yeah, they've got to be disciplined. They've got to stay on guard. As much as people say the Eagles offense is lopsided, like, yeah, they have multiple ways of beating teams. They just haven't had to pull all of them out the bag on any given week. So people act like there's a problem with the passing game and whatnot. But truth be told, when they need to get the job done, they get the job done. JV says, yes, the Cowboys don't have any room to rest for the rest of the season. This is facts. Like, the only reason they're even getting, like, half of a benefit of the doubt with the Eagles, I think, is because they're playing the Eagles at home. And Dak has a very good record against the Eagles at home. But, like, real talk, like, it's going to be a tough game. They have a slew of tough games in the coming weeks. And we'll see if the luck that they typically have against the Eagles at home comes into play, or if it's another one of those times that we've been seeing all season where it's like, okay, they have this good win against a struggling team, but then they go and face a good team and they're not looking so hot. So we've got about 6 days to find out. JV also says, I believe they have to run the table to even be in consideration of making the playoffs. I believe that also to be the case. Hold on, let me look. So, yeah, right now, it looks like the Cowboys have about a 13% chance of making the playoffs. 7% chance of, or a 1 to 7% chance of being a wild card team. And then everything else is a less than 1% chance. So, yeah, they pretty much got to win out in order to have a solid chance. And that 13%, I think, is accounting for them winning out. It's like, yeah, they have a 13% chance of winning the rest of their games and therefore making the playoffs and therefore being a wild card team. Let's see. week one game was 24-20. I expect a better defense showing from the Cowboys. I expect a better defensive showing than week one because I feel like a lot of people were surprised at what they saw in week one and they felt like there was a drop off after that. And as long as the Cowboys score more than 20, I believe the Dallas Cowboys win. I'll buy that. I'm not like buying into it like all the way agree, but just like off the top of my head, what I'm thinking about statistically, I'll buy that. I think what it's really going to come down to is the Cowboys are definitely going to have to play a damn near perfect game based on their standards, based on the things that they say they want to do, like what Schottenheimer has been saying about winning the first downs. And I mean, it's going to take even more than that. When it comes to pretty much if you start listing everything that we've heard about what the offense is supposed to look like and what the defense is supposed to look like. And by the offense, I mean like one of the things that I'm inspired by is the way that they spread the ball around. That's something that they're definitely going to have to do against the Eagles. They're going to have to utilize multiple offensive weapons. And by multiple, I don't mean like 3 or 4. They're going to need to get Flournoy involved. They're going to need to get Lipke involved. And on the defensive side, I think if they take some of the foundational elements, some of the things that they did well last night, and they ramp up the intensity, then yes, they do have a better chance of having a good showing against the Eagles. They can't think that it's going to go like it went last night. I think that would be a mistake for them. So they can be inspired by that performance. They can remember how that felt and just be like, yo, we need to bring this like, but times like 300. You know what I'm saying? So now they know that they can get home with 4 because, like, while the Raiders aren't that great of a team and they've struggled, those are still professional athletes across the line of scrimmage from them. So they're like, okay, we've seen what it takes to get home with 4 against a team that's struggling. So, like, let's take that and just remember to perform with more precision, more intensity, and see what we can do. Will they get 16 pressures? Maybe not. But could they get some pressures? Could they make Jalen Hurts nervous? Could they do some things against the Eagles that the Eagles aren't expecting based on what they've seen on film? Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, that's probably going to give them their best odds of winning, is to just bring their game at a level of intensity and a level of performance that the Eagles haven't really seen, and just make them have to respond to the Cowboys performing at a different level. So on the offensive side, those drop passes, unacceptable. Making weird ass play calls if you happen to be behind in points, unacceptable. And by weird ass play calls, I mean 2-minute offense for like a whole ass quarter and getting away from the run, like what they did against the Cardinals. Like, I need them to have a better plan for if things start to not go well, to turn the game around and get it back in their favor. On the defensive side of the ball, I thought we saw some really smart gameplay. Like, even the tackling looked better. So it's like, even just that alone, it's like, hey, can y'all be consistent in that? Because in a lot of the past games, that was a lot of what went wrong for the Cowboys. It's like them getting the ball run down their throat and like just letting guys get yards and yards after contact. JV said, Jazz, did you get my message on X after the game? Also, did you get your Whataburger? JV, I ended up ordering Waffle House. I ate like half of it, and that satisfied my craving. And I got rid of the rest. So yes, I did eat. I had Waffle House. We'll save the Whataburger for another day. I think I got your message on X, the one about the one about CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens going out on the town. I got really distracted when I read it because it made me think of, remember the Titans when dude was like, me and Bertier's mama went out on the town last night. Because I feel like that's the last time I've heard that phrase. But yeah, I can believe it, although that would be disappointing. It's like, I can believe it. And if their penalty for that was missing a drive, hopefully they don't do that again. But yeah, I really don't know what to say since it wasn't confirmed and we don't really know what they did or what they missed because everybody had something different to say. George Pickens gave some sort of explanation about how it was he almost made it sound like a planned scheme thing. CD Lamb didn't want to answer it at all, and Brian Schottenheimer said they missed some things. So just the responses from the team were really weird. So I don't know where you heard that from, JV. I appreciate the information being passed along. It's something that's amusing to think about. And yeah, if I had to discipline those two guys, I think I would limit it to one series too, because I'm like, clearly the team needed them. Because if you look at that series that they missed and how clunky and ineffective the offense looked, and then you look at how it was when they were reintroduced to the in the game, especially both of them on the field together, it's like, yeah, don't put your team in that position again. Guys, please don't. Whatever it is that you want to do, you can do it later. You got all off season. You got so much time. Just do it another time. Just not don't be missing series, especially not with this late of games coming up. Which for anyone who's wondering, they have the Eagles this weekend. After that, they have the Chiefs, which might be an easier game than people would have thought a few weeks ago. Then the Lions, the Vikings, and the Chargers, which should be challenging games. Even with the Vikings having a losing record right now, I still just feel like with that defense that they're bringing to the table, the Cowboys are going to have to stay on their toes for that game. Plus, they themselves are hungry to get some wins. The Commanders and Giants, I'm not too worried about. I'm expecting those to be wins. So at least they'll end the season on a high note with a good foundation for hopefully coming into next season ready to make the playoff run that people were hoping for this season. So we shall see. Anyway, we only got a few seconds left in this segment. When we come back after the break, we've got some read and react. We're going to talk about the Mavericks. We're going to talk about the Wings. And we're going to talk about an issue that has come up related to the Olympics. It's something that I remember talking about my first year doing this podcast, and someone brought it to my attention again recently. So we're going to talk about that as well. So don't go anywhere. We got a couple of minutes of advertisements. We got to pay some bills, and then we're going to come back. If you have any questions during the break, though, put them in the chat, and we can talk about it in the second segment before we get into the read and react. So thanks, y'all, for sticking around. This is another episode of Bitches Love Sports, and I'll be right back.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair. The world's lightest wheelchair is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
And we are back. How's everybody doing? I'm about to look at the chat for what y'all are saying, but I was looking for my first read and react thing because it disappeared. So what happens is sometimes I'll pull up web pages before I come here, and I'll get here and I'll set up, and then the web pages will refresh. So hold on. If I can't find it, then we'll just skip that one because the first one was just about Paige Becker's and okay, here it is. I'll just read the overview for y'all. So I'm sorry to any authors who are not getting credit for this. Oh, wait, here we go. So this is a story by Declan Walsh. This is our first read and react from CTinsider.com. It says Paige Beckers has a new gig. Former UConn's Williams women's basketball star will reportedly act in film. So it says nearly 30 years after Ray Allen starred alongside Denzel Washington as Jesus Shuttlesworth in He Got Game, another sharpshooting UConn alum is stepping onto the silver screen. According to Deadline, former Husky star Paige Beckers is expected to star in Jess and Pearl, developed by Apple Original Films and based on an original film idea from former Scandal cast member Zahir McGee. So apparently the film explores a pair of young stars on the hardwood who have their extraordinary friendship threatened by fame, competition, and the unseemly business of college athletics. So it should be interesting. I feel like that's very relevant to what a lot of people are dealing with today. There was an episode that we did a couple years ago. It was when NIL was first being discussed. And I remember having a woman NIL agent come on. And I remember her actually talking to me and my co-host at the time about the competitiveness among women for NIL dollars, and just how catty and dirty behind the scenes it could get just because there was like such a limited amount of opportunities for women as opposed to the male athletes. So that was really interesting. So I don't know if this story is going to be anything like that, but if it is, I'm really interested to see what Paige brings to the role and how much of it is like her versus how much of it requires her to like really act like somebody else, you know? Because if y'all watch like Paige on social media, like the way she looks doesn't really align with like the attitude that she brings out when she starts moving or talking or sometimes dancing. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of makes me think like if they put her in a movie, are they going for the look and they want her to act more like what she looks like? Or are they going to be like, oh no, we like the attitude that you have naturally as a person. Bring that to this movie. You know what I'm saying? So I'm interested. I'm curious. Let's see what we got next. The next read and react is about the Dallas Mavericks. So on ESPN.com, there's an article that says trade AD, wait for free agency, tank, every option in Dallas. So for all the Dallas Mavericks fans, if you're looking for something to read about the options for the team for the rest of this season and next season, definitely head on over to ESPN.com. This particular article has 4 different sections. It's kind of long, so I'm not going to read all of it. But the sections they have are: should they trade AD and what is his value if they do? Should they reshape the roster around Flag? Should they wait for AD and Irving to get healthy? Should they pivot to lottery positioning? And should they focus on 2026 free agency? Now, I don't know if pivot to lottery positioning is like a fancy terminology for tanking. I will never encourage tanking, but they might not have to try. Like right now, the Mavericks are 4-11. It's looking like that should be a concern of theirs anyway. So, you know, I don't know. And especially with it being that their 2026 pick is one of, I think last time I checked, only 2 first-round picks that they have control over for like the next 5 years. It's something that they might want to think about in terms of what they want to do, what they need on the team. But other than that, in my opinion, yeah, they should focus on free agency. They should focus on trading. We talked about this last week. I'm like, I think they should go younger, get rid of the older pieces, the hurt guys, and just go younger, build around Cooper Flag, and go from there. The best way to rebuild is to admit that you're rebuilding. If you try to rebuild but try to pretend like you're winning, it usually doesn't go well. And that's one of those, as it is in sports, so it is in life, moments, pieces of advice. It's like one of the first things that you have to do when you set a goal is be honest about that goal. because otherwise you're telling yourself one thing, but you're operating in another way. So, like, yes, they need to rebuild, and they need to do it with boldness. They just need to unapologetically, well, maybe apologetically, they should apologize to the fans, but they just need to be like, hey, we fucked up and we need to rebuild around Cooper Flag. So here we are. We're gonna have a very young team, and we're gonna see what they can do. Because I mean, in some cases it works. We've seen that actually work out well. I mean, like, look at what Oklahoma has managed to pull off, and they started with some very young pieces, and now they're like the most dominant team in the NBA. So it could work out. The next read and react is related to WNBA CBA discussions. So the headline says Asia Wilson delivers huge update on WNBA CBA discussions. Now, spoiler, it wasn't a huge update, but I do think that what she said was interesting and kind of gives us an idea of where they are with the negotiations. So what Asia Wilson said was, obviously we're still pushing through, but I think for us it's just to continue to stand on what we believe in and what it is to be a business and how we handle ourselves. And I think when you're thinking about a united front, it's the WNBA. We're not going to shake anything until we get what we want. The 2025 League and Finals MVP further stated that they are also trying to make things better for players who will play in the WNBA years later. I think we're tired of the mindset of just being grateful for what we have. No, we need to dive into it, she said. And it's not just for the women of the league now. We're talking about the women coming up, the future. We want them to have a safe space where they can perform at a high level and get that revenue share and to live on a salary that is what they've earned, that's livable, Wilson added. Now, I make about a quarter of what most seasoned WNBA players make. So I'm not going to say that their salary isn't livable, but I'm going to say for the role that they've played in building the WNBA into what it is, like, yeah, they do deserve a bigger share of what the league is earning. So based on this, it sounds like there hasn't been much progress made in terms of figuring out any sort of compromise. It sounds like the WNBA players are still steadfast in sticking to what they've been saying since basically all year. Like, the WNBA has had a long time to figure this out, and they just, for whatever reason, have been dragging their feet. I guess expecting the players to eventually give in, and they're not. So if they don't figure that out, this could be an issue, because the thing about sports now is, pretty much every sport is global in the sense that players can find other opportunities in other places. Like, if they don't like what you're putting on the table, they can find other opportunities. Now, the interesting thing about American sports is that for most sports, the American teams, the American leagues are offering the best salaries. And what's interesting with the WNBA is that there are other leagues that are popping up that are offering competitive compensation. So that brings to mind another related read and react, which is what Skylar Diggins-Smith actually said about the Unrivaled League. So that's the league that is created by Nafisa Collier and her husband. That's a 3-on-3 league, so not exactly the same as a WNBA. But when it comes to their standards, it's definitely making, in some people's eyes, it's making the WNBA look bad. So Skylar Diggins-Smith said, this is an article in USA Today. It says, Diggins is known for her candid demeanor, and it was on full display when she said she's the oldest player in the league. At age 35, Diggins said that she needs all the things to compete at a high level, especially coming off maternity leave in 2024. Unrivaled answered the call by providing weight rooms, massage therapists, saunas, cold tubs, childcare, and nutritionists, and the list goes on. We had everything to help our body be at an elite level, and that's the only way that we can compete at that level, Diggins explained. It starts from top to bottom with the leadership that they have there, and it trickles down to who's around us and the support staff, strength and conditioning coaches, athletic trainers, the managers and club managers that work with our teams from day to day. It's a well-oiled machine. Although Unrivaled raised the standard, the 3-on-3 league isn't complacent. Unrivaled plans to add amenities and resources based on feedback from its first season, including a new and improved weight room and more player staffing. The league will also eliminate back-to-back games by adding a pair of expansion teams, the Breeze BC and the Hive BC. Unrivaled showed how important it is to include the athlete in the decision-making process, to include their vantage point, and to have the diversity of opinion as far as what's going on with these leagues and with our league, Diggins added. Unrivaled has also changed the conversation around by offering players ownership and equity in addition to an average salary of $222,222. The league is now valued at $340 million, which allows players to benefit from the league's success. So it's a very different environment than what's being offered in the WNBA. And this is also happening around the same time that there's a Saudi-backed professional women's basketball league that's also supposed to be a spring league. It's called Project B, set to launch in 2026. It's a six-team. It features six teams and a tournament-style format across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. And it's people have been noting that it's a Saudi-backed team, but it's not associated with the Saudi Arabian women's national basketball team. People are just talking about the money that's going into making this league a reality. But yeah, the first season is scheduled for late 2026 and is supposed to run through April of 2027. And it says the league is reportedly offering high salaries to attract top players, with some reports suggesting figures upwards of $50 million for certain stars. So I say all that to say that while in some other leagues, the fan base is the type of fan base that will watch anyway, even if their favorite players decide to go do something else. Somebody else will take their spot and fans will still be interested in the game. With the WNBA, they have competition for the top players. And if those top players leave the WNBA, the fans will go with them. So it's just something to think about for the WNBA while they're I don't know if they're deciding or if they've decided. I'm not sure what the plan is because nobody's really saying anything to the press. I just know the CBA was supposed to expire at the end of October. They agreed to a 30-day extension, so they still have a couple of weeks left, but it doesn't sound like they've actually made any progress so far this month. So everybody's just waiting to see what happens next. And the last read and react is related to the Olympics. So this, like I said, is related to something that me and my co-host covered in I want to say like our first year. Yeah, it was our first year because we were covering the Olympics, and there were some stories that came out of the 2020 Olympics that were actually held in 2021 due to a pandemic that I think some people forget happened, and the effects of which are still affecting us today. But yeah, so some of the storylines were related to basically what it means to be a woman is what it came down to. So the gender policy, the inclusion and or exclusion of transgender women in sports, and then just the impact on some women who were not even transgender. So there was at least one intersex player who was denied participation because of chromosome makeup and hormone levels. So this is a woman who all her life has identified as cisgender, but basically they were like, well, you got too much testosterone and your chromosomes are weird. And I probably should have pulled up more facts about this, and we'll probably talk about this more on Thursday or maybe next week, depending on the development of the story. So if you're watching this now or after the fact and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, please provide more details. Just put that in the comments or the chat, and I'll make sure and include that. Because I'm not even recalling the woman's exact name right now, which I feel really kind of bad about. But basically, that was a situation that happened, and it was a discussion after the Olympics, and it's kind of been an ongoing discussion ever since. And so what they ended up deciding at the time was to create a policy where it was up to each international federation and based on each sport, what they decided to do in terms of their gender policy. And that seemed to satisfy a lot of people at the time. But then fast forward, you get to August, the U.S. Olympic Committee, I should say, has decided to exclude transgender women. And now it looks like there's a policy that's being proposed that would exclude transgender women from the Olympics altogether. And some of these proposals are suggesting that it be based on whether or not a person has gone through male puberty. And so somebody hit me up and they were like, hey, you seem to really support leaving it up to each international federation a few years ago. What do you think about this change? And so here's where I'm at with it right now. I I understand the people who want to keep it fair when it comes to sports. We want sports to be fair. That makes sense. Um, I think it's possible to keep it fair and keep it about sports without attacking any women, whether it's transgender women, intersex women, women with really high testosterone, whatever. I think it's fair to keep it about sports and keep it fair without attacking any women. And so you might be like, what do you mean by that? Here's what I mean by that. There are some people who are using this issue as a jumping off point to attack trans women in general and to attack the idea of trans women. And I feel like that's not necessary here. I feel like if you want to have those debates, there are other places to have them. And in some cases, there needs to be education. In some cases, it's just like bigotry, and it's even less about trans women than it is about defining what a woman is supposed to be, right? And so those are the situations that bother me because I just feel like as women, we've seen in the past what happens in society when certain entities start saying what's okay and what's not okay when it comes down to what it means to be a woman, right? And it ends up not just affecting trans women, not just affecting lesbians or whoever you think it is. It ends up putting straight cisgender women in a box too. So it's one of those things that really should concern everybody. I don't know, like no woman I fuck with wants to be put in a box. Right. And that's basically where this ends up going in terms of a slippery slope. Right. And so that's one of the reasons that like my ears start to perk up when I start hearing people be like, we need to ban transgender women. It's like, OK, well, what is your goal here? Are you attacking transgender women? Are you attacking women? Or do you think that you're promoting fairness in the sport? And you just really don't know exactly how to approach that, right? So when I say we can make this about sports and keep it fair, here's what I mean. When people start saying like, okay, we need to eliminate people from women's sports who have gone through male puberty, that's when you can have the conversation of like, okay, what is it that we're trying to keep out of the sport by eliminating people who have gone through male puberty? Like, I feel like it takes creativity, it takes having honest conversations in order to handle these situations appropriately, as opposed to a knee-jerk reaction to like, oh, well, we need to remove a certain type of woman, right? Because there are some women who, for example, may have gone through male puberty, but depending on their chromosome makeup, depending on their hormone receptors, depending on whether or not they may have been, for example, born intersex, and a decision was made for them before they had the agency to make that decision for themselves, they could be someone who's gone through male puberty but didn't develop the way most people develop when they go through male puberty. You know what I'm saying? And so some of this stuff won't be covered in a 1-hour radio show. Some of this stuff, like if you've never heard that there are some people with 3 chromosomes, for example, and that there are people out there who look like women on the outside, but they got 2 X's and a Y or something like that, then just Google it. Like you'll learn about that. Or if you don't understand what it means to be intersex, like Google that too, right? But while these are rare situations, while these are not typical situations, they're not common, they are clearly situations that have come up and caused people to have to make policies around them. So all I'm saying is instead of making headlines about transgender women, if what your goal is fairness in sports, this is actually an opportunity to acknowledge that fairness in sports goes beyond gender. So it's like, if you can't get to where you're trying to get by saying women over here and men over here, then instead of trying to fit everybody into the boxes, just be like, hey, we need a solution besides the boxes. Like, I don't see why that's a problem. Is it be like, hey, we need a solution besides hormone levels. We need a solution besides people's genitalia. We need something that actually addresses the fairness that we're trying to achieve in these sports. And that goes beyond gender. That includes other things besides hormone levels. That includes things that don't require us to have to inspect the genitalia of children, right? So that's what I'm saying, is if people would just be honest about that. Like, here's what I'm trying to achieve in this sport. Boom, boom, boom. So here's what we have to do to ensure this in this sport. Boom, boom, boom. You can have those conversations without just making it about women. Because, like, if y'all think about it, nobody ever brings up trans men. And they do exist and they do play sports. I've met them. Like roller derby is a very inclusive place. So I've played open gender roller derby. I've had trans teammates. I've played against trans players. And like sometimes I tell people that and they're like, "Oh my god, that must have been scary." Believe it or not, they're not always the scariest people on the track. Like, yes, I've met some trans women who are very tall, and that can be intimidating when you're like me and you're 5'3". But I've also met some women who are bigger, taller, stronger, and faster than any of the trans women I ever skated with or against. Like when I think of the women who I'm most scared of on the track, the first women who come to mind are not only cisgender women, they're cisgender straight women. Them some bad bitches, I'm telling you. So it's like if somebody were to bring me to the table and say, "Hey, we're making fresh rules for roller derby and we want it to be fair in terms of competitiveness," gender, hormones, shit like that would not be the first things that I bring up. So what I'm saying is we can have this conversation if people will be honest. If your goal by having this conversation is to attract trans women, go over there. We don't need you over here in sports. We don't need you over here like polluting what should be a world event where people can come together based on common interest. Go somewhere else with that. Bring that somewhere else. The political shit, bring that somewhere else. But if your goal is to create fairness and parity in sports, the same way that like people had to introduce things like weight classes in some sports, there's even rules based around experience and the number of games that you've played and the types of game that you've played. There's so many ways that people have tried to introduce parity and maintain parity in sports that if that's really your goal, without making it about trying to define what a woman is supposed to be and resorting to stereotypes, arbitrary standards, or just plain ignorance in order to do that. So I hope that makes sense. As we get closer to the next Olympics, or like I actually think the Olympic trials are already going on, I'll definitely keep an eye on this, especially for the old school fans who are still interested in stories like this. And if I'm being honest, I do want to get back into covering more global stories. It's been tough for a while just because, like, especially since I've been writing about the Cowboys, and I think I was telling y'all this last night during the live stream, with me writing about the Cowboys and having limited time outside of my full-time work, it's just been so much easier to talk about what I write about. But I do want to get back into covering more of the global stories and stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes in the coming weeks. But yeah, definitely keeping my eye on this, keeping my eye on the Olympic trials, and then same thing with the World Cup that's coming to North America. So there should be some really interesting and fun topics to talk about. And we'll see what happens with this one. So we got a few minutes left. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat. Clement agrees with me. Says, yes, it's time for the Mavs to embrace the rebuild and build around Cooper Flag and get younger, impactful players. 100%. And now that Nico Harrison is gone and Mark Cuban, sounds like he's playing a bigger role with what the Mavs are doing. I think they'll make some smart decisions in that regard. I definitely trust Mark Cuban. And from what I understand, Nico Harrison wasn't too big on having his input. So that was definitely a problem. So now he's gone. Mark Cuban is back in the loop. So we should see some better decision makings from the Mavs. JV says, Saudi already has American football players coming to their country for a charity game. Yeah, Saudi is doing a lot of stuff. I think they're trying to change their image and become like a destination tree. Like, hey, you might have heard in the past that if you come over here, we'll kill you for really arbitrary violations of our culture norms and standards. We promise we won't. Look, we got comedians and sports. We're cool now. Like, that really feels like the vibe from Saudi Arabia these days. And that ironically is also something that I talked about years ago when they started investing in it was like Live Golf, and I think there was some sort of soccer event. But at the time, I was like, yeah, it looks like they're trying to diversify from things like oil and find some other things to help keep their revenue and their riches high. And sports is like when it comes to revenue, like, capitalism, sports is it. Like, sports is like peak entertainment, and entertainment is a way to make money, like real money in this day and age. So Yeah. I haven't heard a lot about the American football game in Saudi, but I don't doubt it, and I'm interested to see who's going and who's playing. But yeah, that's part of the reason why you're seeing so many football players traveling around. Like, and it's not just flag football either. Like, there are some countries who are like, no, we want in on this contact football stuff too. There are some countries who have established contact football leagues, and as a matter of fact, I want to say like in a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Um, I'm planning to have a guest on this show who has played football, if I remember correctly, in like 5 or 6 different countries. And he wants to talk to us about what that's like and what it means and what it says about the sport. Um, we had a really fun conversation, and there are just some interesting things that when you start traveling for things that America is known for, and you realize how like the product itself is dope, but it's interesting how other countries who are interested in the product are less interested in American culture. It's actually pretty amusing. So that should be a pretty fun conversation when that comes up. But yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. So next week, I'm sure we'll talk about the Cowboys and the Eagles game. If you're watching later this week, I'm going to watch the press conference from Brian Schottenheimer, and I'll talk to y'all about it either tomorrow night or Thursday. Like I always say, keep your notifications on. But yeah, as always. Oh, and then the film for the Raiders game came out today. I didn't even realize it was out. I didn't think it would be out that quick, so I didn't even watch any of it. So definitely by Thursday, I'll be giving some input on who got what snaps and who was at what position. But thanks for watching. This has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports on NTX Radio. I'm your host, Jazz Monet, and I'm out.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
If you're trying to quit drinking or doing too many drugs, listen to me. You don't know me and we'll never meet. I had a problem like you once. I drank and used to party a little too much till it got out of control and almost ruined my life. I realized I needed help with my problem before it totally destroyed me. If you've tried to fix your drinking and drug problem and you know you can't do it alone, you need to call the National Treatment Advisors. They'll immerse you into a 30-day program to replace your old habits with new habits and totally change your life. And if you have PPO private health insurance, the entire program may be covered. Fix your problem right now before it gets any worse. Get clean. Call now and learn.